When the howling starts, the horror begins. Here's your spooky spot on NECA Toys, the Howling Ultimate Werewolf action figure. What was supposed to be a healing retreat in the woods for a TV news anchor turns out to be a terrifying ordeal full of transforming werewolves. From the 1981 horror classic directed by Joe Dante, The Howling comes the ultimate werewolf action figure by NECA. Standing over 9 inches tall, it is fully articulated and even features a moving jaw ready to sink its teeth into its next victim. It includes 3 interchangeable heads, several sets of hands, and opposing base with 2 different sized rods for various height positions. Comes in a collector-friendly window box packaging with opening front flap, making it perfect for display. I don't think you need to be a bright boy to know that fans of the original 1981 classic Howling have been clamoring and clawing through Facebook fan pages and news story sites for years, in the off chance that they would read one day that NECA was announcing doing an ultimate action figure based on one of the coolest designed werewolves ever in cinematic film. But does it live, though, up to the hype? Before we answer all those furry details, we'll take the not-so-furry, not-so-transforming tape measure and see how tall the Howling werewolf stands. Up to the very top of his ears, all the better, of course, to hear you with. You're looking at it impressively standing 9¼ inches in height, making it a figure that's 23½ centimeters tall. I guess you could say I've taken a liking to some of the werewolf figures we've gotten from NECA in the past, as the examples of bring in right now the Kessler werewolf from American Werewolf in London. Prior to, of course, crossing paths with the canine, he wasn't, though, the Kessler werewolf. He was just regular David Kessler. And, of course, his buddy, he's still alive. Of course, here's also what the figure looks like with Jack Goodman. And even going further back from that, here's also what the figure looks like with the Lon Chaney werewolf, all done here in black and white. I'll tell you, out the gate and out the box, the Howling werewolf does have a difficult time to stand. If you're familiar with, like, the Xenomorphs, for example, from NECA, they've done a somewhat similar design. In fact, he has very lean, limber-looking legs, and he has the articulation points kind of working the opposite way. So, because of that, you're going to have a tough time to get the figure to stand. It's only by lady luck alone that I've got the figure currently standing. To help, though, assist with that, NECA does actually technically include a clear acrylic display stand. It consists of really 4 parts. You get yourself a circular display base, and then you get 2 various sized poles, depending on how much length you really need. I find really the longer of the 2 works the best, and then you also get yourself a ball-socketed clip. My worry, though, of this being clear plastic is the fact that this may start to crack over time, especially if you keep swapping out the parts. If I happen to hopefully have this facing the right way. You can see that in the top, both of them actually have sockets, little cup joints, and you take yourself whatever one that you want to use. Again, I generally go with the longer one, and you take the ball joint for that, and you plug it in place. Now, again, not only are you going to worry about having that being a part that's going to crack on you, but I also worry with this being a C-clip like this, that this may start to fracture over time as well. It hasn't happened yet. But I could certainly see that being something that's going to be a problem down the road. This just plugs in place. So, of course, you don't want to plug in that side, but you're going to plug in the more narrow side, and that goes into the bottom of the base. Now, I have already noticed, though, with the few times that I've done that, see, there's a little line right there. Oh, it's right there. I don't know if that's a fracture line or if it actually came out of the packaging that way. But again, you're just basically going to push this into this. You may actually have to put a little bit of pressure, more than you really think you need to do. And then that just plugs in place like that. Oh man, I'm having a harder time doing this than I thought I really would. Probably doesn't help that I have all this extra moisturizer on my hands. Anyways, though, like I was saying, this really does plug in place. And then this is going to plug onto the bottom undercarriage of all the places it needs to be. It plugs to the undercarriage, and you really would hope that in this case, the werewolf doesn't have nards, because that's exactly where it needs to go. So essentially what you're really doing, though, is that with the clamp, it fits really like around this area of all the places I know. It has to plug in right there for the werewolf. And that sort of helps to stabilize the figure. If we kind of move everything all out of the way, get out of the way. This basically, again, just clamps underneath the groin area of the werewolf. I'm just going to kind of hold it here for right now. You don't really have to clamp it, so to speak, even if it just rests against it. I know it draws more attention to the fact that clearly he's resting on a clear base, but still, though, it's going to prevent the figure from falling over. And that's, at the end of the day, the thing that you really want the most out of him is just that he's not going to fall over on you. Having hit just with the display base and just balancing him alone, I can only tell you, I mean, counting more on just 2 hands, probably even have to bring up my feet for that. This guy has fallen over several times during this review. I just had to go back and obviously reshoot those scenes. But again, like the figure stands fine. If, again, you make use of the display stand, certainly would encourage you guys to use the display stand if you have it. For the figure's accessories, though, he does have a pair of relaxed hands on the ends of his forearms. You can also easily swap those out with more kind of gestured hands, where you can see like the claws are a little bit more angled in. And then he also has more feral-looking hands with wider-looking fingers. All the hands themselves, I will, again, want to draw your attention to that, just how well they're actually painted. The nails on the ends are using kind of more of a beige color, and even like the limber-looking fingers. Oh man, look how cool those fingers actually are. I do like that they've also added a sheen to this too, so it looks like the fur is kind of wet. Again, to swap out the hands is just a case of taking the hands that already currently has and just wiggle them off the posts. So again, you just kind of wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. If you're having a hard time doing any of these, by the way, I would certainly encourage heating these hands first in hot water. But I haven't had any problems with them so far. So far, I say. And again, we're just going to plug the new hand in place. That's all that's really required. And each of the hands, by the way, do have a hinge, so you can move those back and forth as well. That's not just the only thing that's swappable as well for the werewolf. Let's just kind of move his stand out of the way for right now. He does also have some swappable heads. Now, if you get this guy straight out of the packaging the way that he is right now, he's still already good to go and display on the stand, display on your shelf the way he looks. With basically just a closed mouth, you can still fully see the top and the bottom of his canine teeth. It's hard, though, to make out his eyes because they're quite incredibly small, but I do like that they've colored them a nice bright yellow. So even though as small as those peepers may be, you can still make out that the werewolf's looking right at you. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel a little uneasy that this werewolf is looking at me right now. Possibilities, the figure does also have some swappable heads. So he also has a more growling head, which is super cool. I do like the look of this head sculpt, but truth be told, I got to go with maybe like the Howling face is probably my favorite of the three. There's also one that has a bloody mouth, and it actually does benefit from not only just having some additional red, but it does also have a hingeable jaw as well. But I just want to quickly show you what this one looks like. Super cool looking head. They all plug in essentially the exact same way. What's though rather interesting, if you look at the undercarriage or undersection of the head, you can see that it actually says number 2. If you look at this one, which is the one I wanted to bring in last, if you look on the bottom of that, it actually says, I think it says 3. It's really hard and faint to see, but I think it does actually have a number on it, and it's right there on the side. What's cool though about this head is, unlike the other two, it meets in the middle. So we just put this figure down here for a second. If you like, though, the closed mouth, this one benefits from being able to actually close its mouth. Or if you want to have it in a full howling pose, you can also bring the mouth out as well. Now, this one doesn't benefit from that. But again, like if you don't mind the fact that this has a little bit of extra rouge on it, it's pretty cool that you can actually have a hingeable jaw. And then basically, as you want to have the figure displayed on the shelf, one day you may go up to it and say, you know what, Wolfie needs to keep his mouth closed. You can do that. Or again, you can open it completely out. Super cool looking head sculpt, though, in all 3 of them. Again, I think like the blood adds a lot of extra character to it. Some may not really like the idea of having the extra blood, so I like that at least they give you the other option, but this one just doesn't benefit from having a hingeable jaw. The hinge hides pretty well too. Of course, because he does also have the additional draping of fur on the front and the sides of his cheek, it does actually do a nice job of covering over what normally would be a slightly hinge joint, would likely peg in place on either side here. Again, the eyes are really kind of hard to see and make out, but with the brightness used of that yellow, they do manage to do a pretty good job of actually popping pretty well. Of course, this Howling werewolf is also known for having really long ears, and I think they've done a nice job of sculpting that as well. To change out the head, now what's kind of cool also about the werewolf too is that when you pop the head off from the collar, you can actually remove these collar pieces too. I mean, it looks a little unsightly, obviously, removing the collar, but just to show you, though, that it's also something that you can take off. And basically what it is underneath, there's a ball joint here, and there's a ball joint here. And of course, yeah, I know, there's a ball joint here as well. But with all those 3 individual component pieces, there's quite a bit of flexibility going on here. And then basically the plastic pieces of the fur just go over top of that. One thing I did actually find that was helpful for adding the new head sculpts is they don't find the easiest way to peg onto the ball joints right away. If you take the fur off, though, I found it was just enough to kind of give an extra little bit of leverage. They can plug the heads properly in place, just to kind of work the ball joints in there. And then once you kind of relaxed enough of the socket inside, then you can just take the head back off, like that, put the fur collar pieces over top, and then put the head back in place. There's just enough of the post. I feel like it could have been probably just a little bit longer to help assist attaching onto the head. But again, like just put a little bit of pressure onto the head, make sure it's fully securely on there. And now you got yourself the werewolf that has a oh, the howling mouth, which is super, again, cool and creepy. Again, with the 3 different head options available, some may have just preferred to go with this head sculpt. I think if it was a case where, let's just say I only had, let's put this on for a second. If I only had this head sculpt and I only had this one here, likely I definitely would have gone with this one, because I think that just makes for a much cooler looking werewolf. If any, ever you get a chance to really have a werewolf howling, especially with a Kessler wolf, that's usually the way I have the figure displayed. Anyways, though, for the rest of the figure's body, I know we kind of spent a whole lot of time talking about the head sculpt. If we kind of carry on our journey for the rest of the fur and all the sculpting that they've incorporated here, I think the fur looks pretty good. I feel like there are aspects in the movie where the fur comes across a little bit more lighter than what we're actually getting here. Generally, though, the tone that they went with is kind of more of a dark gray, very dark chestnut brown, with like the lighter undercarriage, though, is done. It's kind of more of a brushing of a very almost like whitish brown that they've put there as well. It helps just to add a little bit of necessary color. I think it certainly does help. It goes a long way. There's also a few little aspects of that, too, also on the shoulder and the bicep area. But mostly, though, you're looking at a lot of brown. You're looking at a lot of chestnut brown. And it looks good. I think it looks really well, and it does look certainly like the werewolf. We don't get really a lot of full glance shots of the werewolf. It's generally like a lot of close-up shots. It's a lot of like cut moving scenes fast, where the werewolf doesn't really get a chance, or you don't really get a chance as a viewer to kind of really see what's all going on with the designs. Now, one thing, though, about the werewolf is that, again, he does have very thin-looking legs, and he has a real hard time to stand up. The biggest thing that's kind of really facing his figure is the fact he does have such small feet. These tiny little feet, you got to imagine like how much little it actually has for a footprint to stand it on a shelf. So again, it's a really good thing that they include the display stand, which again has to go in all the worst places. It has to go right there. But at least it does give you a way of giving it some additional stability to the figure. He does also have a little bit more of a softer plastic right here. One of the things that you may also start to notice too when you're displaying this figure is like the thigh tends to pop a little further out from the lower abdomen area. It's not something you can necessarily fix, because it is naturally, though, a much shorter piece right here. It doesn't actually stick out wide enough to cover over the legs. I wish it was a little bit more seamless where they made it a little bit wider. But in the end, though, I'd rather have traded this off for a much more narrower an abdomen area. For the figure's articulation, though, again, we're sort of back to the heads. That head's going to be on a ball joint. We've kind of already established that. So the head on its own essentially has a ball joint here and a ball joint here. That's before we even look at the rest of the stuff going on. So with that alone, the head can really quite freely move up and down, rock it back and forth. Of course, you can move it down, and you can turn it really all the way around if you wanted to. As though you turn it around, you may run the risk of this popping off the ball joint, but it looked like I attacked it pretty securely. This head also does benefit from, we've already established, a hingeable jaw. So of course you can open and close that as well. Now with that, you've also got the ball joint here, and you've got a ball joint here. So with those two, you can actually have an additional posability in the neck. As you sort of, though, move the neck, it will break up some of the molding, and you can kind of see there are some gap spaces. So if you choose to have like the werewolf howling to the moon, you may want to then go back in there and just fix up the color. One thing that's kind of good, though, too, is even if the color piece, the fur, goes further down, they actually did sculpt this section. If I get my blasted finger out of the way, they sculpted the top, though, of this post. So they actually did sculpt some additional fur. It's not, though, as the same brown color. I kind of wish it was a little bit more of the same brown. So because, like, if you look at it and have it displayed this way, you can, though, notice that this is much more gray versus the brown that's all around it. So again, like, really decent posability in the head. Moves fairly freely, a lot better than I really thought it would. The top of the torso is also going to be on a very good ball joint, so you can easily move the torso all the way around. These arms also do rotate all the way around. There's a hinge joint there as well. The hinge joint gives about a T-pose, full 90-degree angle bend if you prefer. Of course, there's also this swivel in the bicep. That's got that too. And the figure does also have a single hinge in the elbow. Technically, if you really kind of look at it from the bottom, it does kind of give you the idea that it should have a hinge, where a double hinge, one right here and one right here. But when you can see it from the front, it clearly looks like it's only more just a single hinge. Of course, we've already also looked at the fact that hands rotate all the way around. You can hinge those back and forth too. It doesn't matter whether you want to use these hands or the other allotment of hands that they also throw in there in the box as well. As for his legs, let's just get everything situated here. We'll just kind of bring the arms around there. There we go. The legs do move forward. They also move back as well. You can hinge those out quite a lot. In fact, actually, with the way that they've established the ball joints inside the thighs, you can pull off almost a full Van Damme. I don't think a werewolf would ever really be pulling off a splits like this, but with your figure, you certainly can. There's a swivel there at the top of the thigh. Now there's a hinge right here for the leg. So again, depending on really how you guys want to have this guy posed, you don't have to have it fully extended, sort of the same way as a xenomorph. Some people don't generally like to have the xenomorphs completely standing at attention like this, and you don't really have to do that either with the Howling's werewolf. If you want to have it a little bit shortened, you can actually just bend the knee just a little bit, and then kind of compensate it by bending the front of the knee, or this front of the hind leg. You can also bend that further forward as well. So there's a swivel here, there's a swivel here, and then there's a hinge that allows this to bend forward as well. So again, like if you want to have a little bit more of a lower pose for that, then you would be making use of the shorter post. If you want to have it fully extended, you want to use the longer post. And again, it plugs in the exact same way. For the lower leg here, or around the ankle area, there's a hinge right here. And this also swivels just a little bit as well. And there's also at the actual feet themselves, which I know we didn't spend a whole lot of time looking at the individual piggies. How many of these piggies went to the market? How many of these piggies just stayed home and devoured all the rest of the family? There's a swivel right here, so you can rotate these back and forth. And there's also a hinge there as well. Combine all that, there is actually a fair bit of posability at play here when it comes to werewolf. But again, a lot of it does really require you using a display stand. On its own, you're not going to have the easiest time. In fact, I mean, even at the beginning of this video, when I brought in my tape measure, I couldn't tell you how many times that figure actually did fall over. In the way that you can kind of get him in a balancing pose, he does stand. But, again, like the promise of having this guy permanently displayed like this on the shelf, I wouldn't make that kind of promise because the guy's clearly going to fall over. Once again, bringing back in another example of the werewolf, here is what he looks like again with the Kessler werewolf from American Werewolf in London. Hey, again, there's also Lon Chaney as the ultimate wolfman. Man, oh man, I love the design here of the Howling werewolf. Again, there are a few little problems that kind of face this figure, sort of the same problems that also face a xenomorph, in the sense that there's a lot of posability really from like the waist down. And that additional posability causes then conflict for the figure to stand. But luckily, though, NECA's really started to kind of consider all that. They've done the same when it comes to the xenomorphs. They've also done the same, if I actually get the post actually in there, they've done also the same when it comes to the Howling werewolf. There's, of course, the display stand. It consists of really, again, 3 parts. Being that this is also, there goes the werewolf, being that this is, again, like clear plastic, I couldn't help but, again, notice that I've got a little crack right there. I don't know if that came out of the packaging like that, or if that happened just with the few times that I've actually attached the display post. Again, you've also got yourself the ball joint here that can be swapped around. But again, like, will that crack over time? I don't want to say like these are all things that could happen down the road, but these are all things like I can certainly have experienced in the past where clear plastic doesn't have the longevity to it. I mean, it kind of gives you more the illusion of something that's not actually there rather than using the opaque plastic. But in the end, though, like, I would definitely encourage using a display stand with a Howling werewolf, simply just because he's not a figure that's going to stand well on his own. If I was to clock the time that I've now spent with the werewolf, stop that, you guys. It's been a good maybe 2.5 hours. And in that 2.5 hours, I can tell you what's developed is more of a love for this figure. But unfortunately, you know what else has developed? Additional cracks in that clear base. That clear display base just isn't going to work well if you have to put pressure against it. And that's exactly what you need to do in order to get the post lodged in there. So you have to unfortunately put more pressure that's required into a centralized hole right smack dab in the middle of that display base. And now what would have started with 1 crack has now developed 2. This probably will then continue, and I think that crack has spread even further than it was when I first noticed it. It's a shame, though, that they have to use clear plastic. I know on the one end, clear plastic at least gives you more of that invisible look, especially if you're looking to prop a figure like this on your shelf. Unfortunately, the negatives that go with that is clear plastic, again, just doesn't take well to pressure. I don't think any of us really take well to pressure. And that kind of plastic is very known to cracking. NECA is not just responsible for using clear plastic for their display bases. There's been other companies as well, like Diamond Select. Diamond Select also had cracks that developed where you always have to put the adjustable neck into a small hole smack dab right in the middle of a display stand. If you can overlook cracks that will develop in the base, I think the rest of the figure that's attached to the base is fantastic. Love the look of the 1981 Howling werewolf. Now, I'm choosing right now to go with the bloodied mouth. One of just the benefits of that is the fact that the mouth does have a hinge to it. The other 2 mouths don't have hinges on the other 2 heads. So again, you can go with this head and just have the benefit of having 2 different looks, or again, you can just swap out the heads. I will say, though, like, changing out the heads can be a little bit more difficult. I did show you guys in this review that you can also remove the fur collar pieces just to get a little bit more leverage to work it onto the ball joint. You can also, of course, use the trick of using hot water. You can also use a hairdryer. In the end, though, your end goal should really be to swap out the heads. It may work a little harder to do that, but in the end, you got a pretty cool werewolf on display. Does he have a difficult time to stand? Yes, he does, but at least they include a display stand. I wish, though, in a perfect world, the display stand didn't have to crack, but in the end, though, I'm not really going to be spending as much time looking at the display base. Again, I'm going to be looking at the werewolf that's attached onto it. What do you guys think of the Howling 1981 werewolf? A pretty cool looking figure. Is this one that you guys, I'm sure, have already picked up, or is this one definitely on your radar? If you guys did enjoy this video, you can do it a solid, throw it a like. You guys want to stick around for more so? I hope so. I hope so. Because this isn't, by the way, I know, again, I always say this isn't the end of Spottober. There's many, many more videos coming your way for the many, many more days that are left of Spottober. So I hope you guys are going to be coming back with ghoulish peepers peeled. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.